Hey yo, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the last video on this half of Jolly 3. In this video we will be discussing the lore that is within the game. I will explain my take on it, and I will give my opinion on the game and rate the game out of 10. This is the order in which I plan on doing it. All of the lore videos that I will be making on each game, purely because I think the lore should come first, and then my opinion, and finally my rating. Either way, we can go ahead and move right on to the lore, or at least my interpretation of the lore. But wait, first I must ask the YouTuber mandated question, have you subscribed yet? It would help me out a lot, especially help me build this channel into a community, and I would love for you to be a part of that. And you can always unsubscribe whenever you like. Anyway, on to the lore. To begin, I would like to talk about the animatronics themselves and the company behind them. What I determined from this game is that the animatronics were once part of a pizzeria, basically the same as Freddy's. They opened after the closing of Freddy's because of the missing children's incident. I believe this location was opened between FNAF 1 and FNAF 3. Also, I believe that the franchise was opened by William, aka the Bunnyman, to have a new place to capture and murder children due to the closing of his main stomping grounds. These animatronics did do well and were very popular until William's deeds were discovered, and they chose to ship the animatronics off to a different facility. That facility is where our main gameplay takes place in this game. They are tested on, experimented on, and stored. Eventually, this place will become the location that we see in FNAF's sister location. Now, I would like to talk about our character and his doing in all of this. Our character that we play as in the 8-bit minigames and the Noble Knights is Eric. I believe that he did go to the facility, and I'll get into why here in a little bit. He has a child and presumably a significant other, although we don't know if they are still around due to them not being mentioned, but it seems Zoe is his daughter, is actually his blood daughter, and not adopted, so there has to be a girlfriend or wife of some kind, at least at some point. Either way, we get a job working at Freddy's as help with the animatronics. It is not mentioned if we are a technician or just a normal worker, so that I'm not sure of. We start our first day at Freddy's where we have a tour with William, who shows us around the place. He also mentions the locker room by the bathrooms and how it is off limits and not under any circumstances are we allowed near it. He then says we need to start our job before we do anything else but run back to that room where we find William in there, and he presumably has a dead child, which we don't get to see. He says nothing will ever be spoke of what we saw or the room itself, and then threatens us if we tell. And that is where our day ends. It slowly fades to black. We then flash forward to Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, where Eric brings Zoe to Freddy's. He goes in and sees something horrible, most likely dead kids at the hand of William. Comes back and tells Zoe to stay in the car no matter what. Zoe doesn't listen and goes in looking for Eric, where she gets captured and killed by William, all while Eric begs William to not hurt her and to give up on his murdering children stuff. We then flash forward quite a bit into the future where we had lost our job or quit, not quite sure, and the Jolly franchise is booming until the children's incident and the animatronics are shipped off. Eric breaks onto the cargo ship that the animatronics are on to get evidence of what William did in revenge, where it leads him to the facility we play in the Noble Knights. Now we can talk about the incidents that actually happen in the game, and not in 8-bit minigames or talked about dialogue. During the main nights and the first after night cutscenes, we play as Eric as well as we're looking for the artifacts or evidence of the children's murders, along with his daughter's murder. We have our friend on the phone constantly who is keeping an eye on things through the surveillance and the systems in the facility. We find a book, which is never explained what it is, tapes, which canonically we find after night 2, but we found after night 4, and they have information about how the old restaurant ran. And we also find documents in which canonically we probably should have found it after night 4, but like I said, we found those in night 2. But the documents aren't ever explained what is on them either, so we can move on from those. We are planning to use these to expose William and his company, but we get into some dangerous situations just to get them. We then get to the end of the game where our phone man decides that what we have isn't enough, and that we need to get an animatronic to truly make sure that people believe our allegations. And for this half of the game, that's kind of it. We end off with us heading to a different part of the facility where we plan on taking an animatronic from and roll credits. Now, let's get to my opinion of this game, its story, and its gameplay. I think that the gameplay of this game is pretty okay. I wouldn't say it's great, and I wouldn't say it's awesome, like horrible. I would say in the scope of FNAF fan games that the gameplay would be considered pretty much middle of the road. Given that this game came out 7 years ago, that isn't bad at all. There are a few things that I really like about this game, and I'll get into those in a second. But really, considering that this game came out 7 years ago, and there's been many triumphs of technology and ideas since, this game is still not a horrible game, even in today's standards. There are lots of FNAF fan games, let's be honest. There's hundreds of thousands, probably. But in the realm of FNAF fan games, this is a pretty okay one. It's pretty mid. I'm not gonna lie, pretty mid, and not mid in a bad way, mid in a good way, because there's also 100,000 really, really bad FNAF fan games. But either way, I would like to get into what I liked about this game. I really did like the gas system. Needing to refill it after attacks and the use of it during attacks, I think that is a fresh way of deterring animatronics. Much better than a door or a mask, which is usually seen in FNAF games and fan games. I also really like how the Phantom animatronics work for the most part. Freddy and Chica work very well and make the game pretty hard just by themselves. Chica causes you to take more time in the cameras and slow down instead of quickly flipping through, and Freddy tries to keep you from sitting in the office and doing nothing, but he has a slight flaw. And I would like Freddy to just do that by himself instead of us having to flip up and down the cameras just to cause him to appear. I think he should just appear over time. I also think that the majority of the mini games are really good. I do think they take a long time, though. Both Preety and Maxie's minigames are so good. I think they're such a great idea. They're just way, way, way too long. If it takes longer than it takes to beat the night, there is a very big problem. And both of those games took me longer to beat in one run than it takes to beat the night, which is very upsetting, especially Maxie's minigames. Now, I will say, I also really liked the mashing minigame. I know I complained about the mashing minigame and how it hurt, but I really like mashing games in the first place. However, it also has the same problem, how it's just too long. You should not have to mash really aggressively and hard for 2 minutes straight. That's too demanding of your players, and really, it should be about maybe a minute max. That's where I would end it at, but now that I got the pros out of the way, I now have to talk about some cons. First of all the actual animatronics do the same thing. They all wander around the cameras until they reach you, and you give them a hit of your supply, and then they leave. It's not hard at all. And I know it's not trying to be hard, but also it's not interesting. It's not invigorating or scary in the slightest because you're not worried about the animatronics getting you. You're worried about having enough gas supply, which I do like the gas supply. That's not the problem. The problem is none of them do anything different. If, let's say, Jolly is different. Let's say he attacks from a in a different way, doesn't just come into your office. Maybe he attacks a part of the cameras that will affect your gas supply and you have to stop him. That would be great. It would be different, but they all do the same. And because they all do the same, it really makes it seem bad. Like there is not a single normal animatronic that does anything different. But I also think Phantom Bonnie is completely useless. I know I went into it when we talked about Phantom Bonnie in the last episode, but he only shows up in the two windows to your left and your right, which you have to flip the camera like the lights on to look at. And when you do that and he's there, he will jump scare you. That he will do. He will mess up your gas supply. But you have no reason to ever look at these windows. The only reason I even got jump scared by him is because I wanted to. I wanted to experience it and show you guys, which I don't even know if that cut even made it into the final video. So really, Phantomani is completely useless. And the windows, that's another thing. The windows are completely useless. They could have been used in such a useful way to change the game and give certain animatronics or any animatronic something other than wandering about the cameras and getting to your office. They could have had an animatronic instead break a window or show up in your windows at all, and maybe you have to put on the cat lights to scare him off or something. But no, the windows are completely useless unless you want to have a good look at Tweety or Maxie in the very beginning of the night. But after that, you have no reason to ever use them at all in the entire game. And they could have been such a useful way to change the game and give this game a bigger depth of play, but it just doesn't. But I also wish something else I wished for is that Foxy had been a bit more of a presence in this game. I can look past that though. I get that Foxy may have caused this game to be repetitive, just like Phantom Chica and Phantom Freddy, how they only jump scare you and mess up your gas supply instead of doing something else. Maybe he could have been the one who ran around and broke your fans instead of having them a health meter. You had to keep track of Foxy, and once he breaks one and you run out of oxygen, then he attacks you like he does in the game. That would just make so much more sense from a gameplay standpoint, and it would make it more interesting to have to watch him or something to keep him away from the fans and keeping them from being broken. It would just give it much more depth from a gameplay standpoint. But finally, I have to talk about my least favorite part of this game, and it ties into that idea about Foxy. And it's part of the game that I truly hated the entire time. The fan maintenance. I hate RNG when it comes to FNAF fan games. FNAF fan games should not be all RNG. It's fine with a little bit of RNG, but when it gets to the point where RNG is the reason you are losing and it's not because of skill, that is when it draws the line. And the RNG of when the fans break, what fan breaks, and the fact that it seems to break at the worst possible times, which seems intentional and in a bad way to artificially make your game harder, is not a good reason to use RNG. Making your game artificially harder because of RNG and not because of any other gameplay standpoint in your game, that is a bad gameplay. That is what makes great games horrible games. Sadly, not sadly, but good thing is, I think that there are some that the good things outweigh the bad things in this specific scenario. Not the animatronics, but I think they outweigh the RNG. I am sure that you've played a FNAF fan game or FNAF game even, because we know FNAF 2 Custom Night is very heavily RNG. The rest of the game is great, but the Custom Night, the 1020, very heavily RNG. And I'm sure you've played one with bad RNG. And then you would agree that the worst part of FNAF games, or at least even maybe even games in general, is when they are too heavy on the RNG. Honestly, it should be more about skill. It should be more about what you can do as a person, not how many attempts you can put in until you get lucky, which is exactly what I had to do with my night 5, is just put in attempt after attempt after attempt until I finally got lucky. But all in all, the gameplay wasn't necessarily bad. It just failed a bit due to bad RNG and bad design of the animatronics. There were some great ideas in this game, but they shouldn't just stayed ideas. They should have been developed more. And I think if this game got re-released today, it would be 10 times better because someone would add more to give the game depth in the actual main nights. And that's what I would give the gameplay. And I would give the gameplay a solid 5.6 out of 10. Just because of its age and because if it released today, it'd probably be better. Just for that, it gets slightly above average. But how about the story? The story? I truly loved it. I think the story itself ranks up there with the base FNAF storyline, which is kind of fitting because it runs alongside it. We already talked about the lore and the story, so I don't feel like I need to talk about it much more because it would be a little bit repetitious. But I'll go ahead and say my rating. I would rate the story a solid 7 out of 10. Now, that's pretty high because I personally would rate some of the parts of the actual FNAF storyline, especially the Steel Wool, lower than that. The Steel Wool storyline, I would say, at times, especially during Security Breach, is worse than the storyline in this game. It was a really good. It was really good. It was a really good game. It was. I would recommend it. I would guarantee, but I would also guarantee that there were so many FNAF fan games out there that are so much better, and we will find them. But first, we have to get through the second chapter. But I would recommend playing this if you are new to FNAF games due to it not being super hard. It's not a hard game, and I would highly recommend it to someone who wants to get into FNAF fan games. Either way, that's my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this game is either absolute garbage or pure gold. You tell me. But truly, all in all, I would say this game is a solid 6.2 out of 10. Anyway, I've been Carl with a K, and this has been Jolly 3, Chapter 1, sorry. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe and join the community I am trying to build. I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next week where we will start Chapter 2 of Jolly. Peace out, dudes, and have a good one.